welcome to today's lesson on La Francophonie, or the OIF. This is an organization of French-speaking countries that come together to promote French-speaking ideals, democracy, etc., things worldwide. The reason we're going over this today is to talk about the implications of speaking French in the world. Why are we learning French? What will be the consequence of us understanding French, becoming a part of this culture? So let's get right into it today. So to start off, we're just going to review with the word francophone. All right, now that's the stem of the word for La Francophonie. So as you can see here, we have the definition of a francophone. So the adjective francophone means a French-speaking, typically as a primary language, whether referring to individuals, groups, or places. Often the word is used as a noun to describe a natively French-speaking person. So, any questions about that definition? Yes, Brian.
Would that make us francophones?
Exactly right. Because we're all here today, and by the end of the year, by the end of your time here at this high school or middle school, I hope that you'll be able to speak French, and you will be able to describe yourself as a francophone, someone who understands intuitively the French language and is able to speak it on a day-to-day basis. This is my goal for you, and understanding our goals is part of the one step to getting there. All right. So the next slide is how many francophones are there in the world? Now, would you believe me if I told you that there are almost just as many French speakers in Africa as in Europe? And actually, if you look at the statistics, now this is worldwide, but if you just look at native French speakers, not just francophones in general, but native French speakers, there are more native French speakers in sub-Saharan Africa than in Europe. So the future of francophone culture looks like it's going to be coming from Africa, and that's a very promising thing. And you can also see here on the map, and we'll get into this a little bit later, that there are a lot of African countries in the Francophonie, a lot. So, what is La Francophonie? So, we have the definition here. The Francophonie is an institution dedicated since 1970 to promoting the French language and political, educational, economic, and cultural cooperation among the 88 member countries of the Organisation Internationale of la Francophonie. So, here are a couple things that the Francophonie does. One, it promotes the French language and cultural and linguistic diversity. So what does this mean for us? What does this mean? It means that the Francophone community is not just confined to Europe, European people, or France itself. This is a worldwide community. Countries and people all over the world that speak French come together under the title La Francophonie. The second one is to promote peace, democracy, and human rights. These are all things that are very important to French-speaking culture. Although sometimes they're not truly lived up to, we try our best. These are things that are important. And I know that in this classroom, we stand with all these things as well. So, for the third point, is to support education, training, higher education, and research. So you'll see here later that they take actionable steps to do this. One of those is funding schools and training teachers to teach French and French culture and language. And the last thing is to foster economic cooperation to bolster sustainable development. So this is important. The Francophonie also focuses on our climate. So, ladies and gentlemen, these are some important maps I want you to think about when we talk about the cultural implications of the Francophonie. So this is a map of the First and Second French empires combined. So you see the French colonized all these areas here. We have a lot in North America, a lot in Africa here. And you'll see, if you are very adept here, that there's a lot of similar patterns here. A lot of countries where France had colonies that ended up speaking French are part of La Francophonie. So we'll see a lot of sub-Saharan Africa. You see Egypt. France was in Egypt a little bit. We have France itself. We have the Indo-Chinese countries here. We have Madagascar, and we have Canada there are some other important regions here. These are the observer states in green. So we have Louisiana, which is an important one for the French, and a couple others in Eastern Europe and some islands. But that's just something to keep in mind as we go through this. All right, so you know how I was talking about actionable steps that La Francophonie takes? Here are a couple organizations that some of the La Francophonie money and influence goes into. So we have the Agence Université de la Francophonie, which is an association for partly wholly French-speaking universities. So this is basically just to strengthen ties and networks between French-speaking universities to make more French literature, promote French science, and keep French relevant in the field of STEM. TV5 is actually a really great resource if you want to learn French. It's based in Canada, and it's a television channel that reaches almost all of the Francophonie countries. And it does some programming from every member state. So it's a very diverse, very informative channel. And the third one is Université Senghor in Alexandria. So Leopold Senghor was the first president of Senegal, and he was actually one of the most influential people in founding La Francophonie. So his university in Alexandria does a similar thing to the first one, but this is an actual school, and it focuses on training teachers to promote French culture and language. And the last one is l'Association de Maires Officiels of Party and Wholly French-Speaking Cities and Metropolises. So this is a network of French-speaking cities. They come together to develop and train growing cities to be very, efficient, nice to live in. Any questions about this? All right. Now, you might be asking, what really does La Francophonie do? So here are 5 examples of what La Francophonie does. La Francophonie does promote the French language. La Francophonie does promote diversity. La Francophonie does promote democracy and human rights. The Francophonie does support education, and the Francophonie supports development and service. Now, there's a couple of ways they do these things, and I'm sure none of us disagree with what they do. What they do is they get some money from the member nations, and they help develop these things in developing countries that speak French or are observer states. And so there are certain cultural events that they put on, funding of certain institutions, like I had in the last slide. These are all things, and these bolsters connection and a community in the French-speaking world. Now, we have to be careful because there are a couple misconceptions about La Francophonie and what it is. So the next slide is what La Francophonie doesn't do. Here are 5 examples of what La Francophonie doesn't do. La Francophonie doesn't have a standing army. So you won't see La Francophonie soldiers coming down your block. La Francophonie doesn't exist as a unified nation. So if we look back at that map, you saw everything was the same color, but there were still some borders. There's no La Francophonie nation. La Francophonie does not include every French-speaking country. There are some French-speaking countries, or majority French-speaking countries, that are not in La Francophonie. For example, Tunisia and Algeria are not in La Francophonie. Now, third, La Francophonie does not have a common currency. There's not a shared currency between La Francophonie nations as a principle, although in Western Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa, they do have the Central African franc, which goes between some member states, but that is nothing to do with La Francophonie. And the last one is La Francophonie doesn't have a common foreign policy. So if you are a member state in La Francophonie, it does not dictate what politics you do geopolitically. It doesn't have that kind of power. So the last slide here is a fun interactive map you can look at. I have a QR code here and the link, which you can find on our Google Classroom page. And here you'll see all the nations that speak French, and you can go ahead and look at the number of people. So if we click on it, if we wanted to see how many French speakers, let's say, are in the Congo, it would show us that 50% of the Congo speaks French, and 42,533,000 speakers. So you can do that. There's many territories that it has, and I encourage you to look at this either now or after the class is over. All right, here's the works cited page for you all. All right, so I want to make sure I get a couple of things clear. We, in this class, are Francophones. We are part of the global Francophone community. Now, I have a question for you. Why do you think countries might join the Francophonie? Yes, John.
Because they want to develop the French world together?
Exactly. Because they want to help developing with countries that are of similar culture to them. And they can have that kind of cultural understanding. Why is it again that we call La Francophonie? Yes, Lauren.
Because it consists of Francophones?
That's right, because it consists of nations that are Francophone nations. Okay, so I'm going to play a little game with you guys. A little bit of true or false about things that the Francophonie might do. Okay, the first one is, and I want you to answer as a class, all right? Does La Francophonie have a standing army?
No, false.
False. Great, guys. Let's do a little scenario. You are a French artist and you want to share your art with the world. Would you be able to contact somebody at La Francophonie to get funding for that art? And would you have a forum to demonstrate that art? True or false?
True.
That's right, true. All right, great job, guys. All right, now for homework, I want you all to create a sentence using the word La Francophonie, and I also want you to look into something La Francophonie has done and write one paragraph synopsis on it in English or in French. And so next class, guys, we're going to be focusing on French countries and French-speaking regions that are not in the Francophonie, just to make sure we get all of the worldwide French-speaking community in our minds. Hope you guys have a great day. Thank you so much for coming to class.